headline changes the conversation. In sports, narratives move fast, and for those crafting them, credibility and speed matter. Every word carries weight. Franchises, athletes, businesses, people, they're impacted by what's said and how. It's about more than reporting on the wins and losses. It's about the power of information and how it shapes our decisions, emotions, and beliefs. One line can calm a storm or ignite one. This is sports journalism and communications, where narratives are built. This is the Journalism Panel.
Please welcome Sean Zach, Senior Writer at Golf Magazine, Jen Lana, with a sportscaster with ESPN and Good Karma Brands, Barry Baum, the Chief Communications Officer of the Milwaukee Bucks, and our moderator, Douglas McLeod, FGU Centennial Professor at the UW School of Journalism. Please give him a hand.
Thank you, everyone. It's really exciting to be here today, and I want to thank the student organizers of this incredible conference. They really built it in a short period of time into University of Wisconsin institution, and we're grateful for all the work that they put in. So when I was invited to be on this panel, I was really excited because we have three incredibly distinguished communication professionals here. The second thought I had was, wow, they're all so different. The jobs they do are very, very different, but I think that's a really good thing because you're going to get a sense of the variety and diversity of different careers in the field of sports communication. So we're going to start it off with introductions. I'm going to introduce the panel kind of one at a time, let them talk a little bit about what they do, how they got to where they are, and what they like about what they do. And then we're going to move on to talk about some of the trends in the field of sports journalism that are impinging upon their career and their organizations, and then we'll open up for credit. So first, we're going to go in alphabetical order. I'm going to start with Barry. Barry is a graduate of the UW-Madison School of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're obviously very, very proud of Barry and all that he's accomplished. Barry is the Chief Communication Officer for the Milwaukee Bucks, and before that, he also worked for the Barclays Center and the New Jersey Nets, or Brooklyn Nets, I guess they call them now, right? So tell us, Barry, tell us about the job that you do with the Bucks, how you got there, and what you like about it.
Great. Thanks, Doug. First off, I want to congratulate the group of students that put this event together. They did a great job last year, and I think they've even done a better job this year, and it's really professional, so congratulations on this. Anyway, I'm excited to be here. As Doug mentioned, I'm a Badger. I graduated from journalism school. I love it here. My son is a freshman here now, so it's really exciting to come back as much as possible. But it's just it's a great place to be, and so much of what I learned at the journalism school and other classes and writing for the Daily Cardinal as a sports writer for so many years definitely helped play a big role in my career and the path of my career. So you should feel really good for the students here about where you are and the help that you'll get going forward. So feel great about that. So I've been at first off, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Brooklyn Heights, right by the Brooklyn Bridge. I was always a big basketball fan and a big sports fan. And so I talked my way into, when I was in high school, I talked my way into becoming a Knicks ball boy. And I was a ball boy for 3 seasons, which was a terrific experience. Less about going to the games and being on the court, and giving water and towels to the players, but actually meeting the writers and announcers. And I played a big part in helping them during games whenever I could, and that was a big part because I knew what I wanted to do. So after that, I had a television show. I had cable television. I really thought I was going to go into television. I did that for 2 years, and I had Nick on and writers, so I loved that as well. But then when I went to college and I wrote for the Cardinal, after college I thought newspapers was really the path I wanted to take. So I had a few great internships in college and after college, and then finally I had my dream job working for the New York Post, which I grew up reading every day as a sports writer. So I wrote for the Post for 7 years, 5 years mostly high school sports, and then a few years covering the Islanders, which is probably a good reason to get out of journalism. So after that time, I joined a PR agency in Manhattan, which was a great experience to learn about public relations. I thought journalism was a great entryway into public relations, which it was. So many similar traits there. And so one day, a real estate developer from Brooklyn came in and said, came into the office and said, I want to buy the New Jersey Nets and move them to a new arena that he wanted to build in Brooklyn. So that was exciting. I was put on the account. I was from Brooklyn, only a few subway stops from where he was going to build the arena. And so I worked for him he hired me a year later to run his communications out of the agency. And I worked for him for 12 years in the open Barclays Center. I ran communications and for that and developed the PR plan surrounding the opening of the building and then the follow-up to that. Then finally, in 2017, I left and I heard that the Milwaukee Bucks were building a new arena called Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, downtown Milwaukee. You may have been there. And so I reached out to the president, who just turns out grew up with me in Brooklyn. We guarded each other playing basketball growing up at rival schools. So we knew each other, and I stayed in touch with him all these years, which is great. I suggest doing that. You never know when you'll meet. If you meet someone now, stay in touch with them, because you never know when you'll reacquaint with them. And so I've been at the Bucks now for, this is my 9th season. I run all communications for the entire company, everything from the team communications to the business side, to the arena, to your district, to crisis communications, and I love it. And so that's where I am today, and love coming back to Madison and played a big role in my career.
Thank you, Barry. Next up, we have Jen Latta. She is a reporter and anchor for ESPN. She's also a radio host. Before that, she worked for WITI. Did I get that right? Yeah, WITI in Milwaukee, where she was a reporter and anchor. Jen, can you tell us about what you do, how you got to where you are, and what you like about your job?
So I check 1 2 check 1 2. There it is. Here's the thing. I'm a former cheerleader and a mom of 3, so if I needed to yell without this microphone, y'all would have heard me, no problem. So I'm Jen Latta. I work for ESPN and Good Karma Brands. You can see me on Saturday mornings on College Game Day. Do we have any college football fans in the room? Show of hands. Show of hands. Well, it's not as many as I hoped, but it's a good start. So every Saturday morning, I do the feature reports on College Game Day, which is the preeminent pregame show for college football. I've been on the show for 10 years. Prior to that, I worked in Chicago, covered the Chicago Bears, Chicago White Sox. I was their beat reporters. Prior to that, I was in Milwaukee for 7 years, covering your Green Bay Packers, your Wisconsin Badgers, Milwaukee Bucks, Brewers, etc., and Marquette, where I also went to school. Don't hold that against me. We don't have a football team, so guess who I root for? The Badgers. But feature reporting is something I never knew that I was going to have a long career in. It was something I sort of dabbled in. I was a host, certainly enjoyed having conversations about sports, philosophical, sociological, things like that, always really intrigued me. And then when I got to ESPN, there was an opportunity to tell the human interest stories of college football and beyond. And so I've been doing that for the last 10 years. It goes by like that. I'm sure you guys have heard people say that. But my favorite thing about the job that I currently do is the permanency of the features. Several years ago now, I did the feature on the history of the jump around. Have any of you guys seen that story that we did on College Game Day? It ended up winning the National Emmy for short feature, which is a huge, point of accomplishment in my career. And the permanency is that every year I have people coming up to me and telling me that they saw a story, whether it aired the previous season or it aired 5 seasons prior. There is something that stays with storytelling. It's not just your X's and O's conversation. It's not just you're analyzing the game from the previous weekend or the previous night. And so I think that's the thing that I enjoy most about the role that I'm in is I know that I'm doing something that has staying power.
Thank you, Jen. And finally, we have Sean Zach, who is also an alumnus of the University of Wisconsin School of Journalism and Mass Communication. We are also very proud of Sean. He is currently a senior writer for Golf Magazine and the author of a book that is so interesting called Searching in St. Andrews. Zach, tell us a little bit about what you do with Golf Magazine and your career path in getting there and what you like about it.
Yeah, the answer to that question I always use is just utility infielder, which is kind of a cop-out because I do a lot of things, but I think the story of that these people would enjoy is the fact that I interned there 13 summers ago. So wherever your internships are going to be this coming summer might be the place that you end up like running someday. It's not to say that I run Golf Magazine or golf.com, but I'm very high now on the like editorial priority list, if you will, and I haven't worked anywhere else, which some people view as an asset. Some people are like, dude, you need to move on. But the point is you can find some early career success, and leveling up does exist. I know that's happened for both of these people, and so graduated from here in 14, moved out to New York for 7 years when we had an office. We no longer have an office, we spread out because of the pandemic, and we cover the world remotely, the world of golf. So if there are golf fans in here that want to talk to me about it later, we can get into that. But I live in Chicago. Don't get to Madison nearly enough, but I'm a proud Badger Herald alumnus to compete with Barry's Daily Cardinal. So what was really fun for me last night is running into old people that put up with me as a student. Brian Mason was one of them. He works at that point for the University Comms Department, and he's doing something different now. Still works here, still very involved, but like the people that are putting up with you as student journalists, they don't go away. Like they are still very in the world that you will, I guess, inhabit. And that is all just a reminder of like the work that you're doing might be student journalism right now, might be student comms right now. It's still super important, even if some people will maybe downplay it at times.
Thank you. So as I looked across the diversity in communication-related professions that you all engage in, one of the sort of commonalities I thought we could talk about a little bit is the role of storytelling. You all, in your own way, engage in storytelling, and I was wondering if you could sort of talk to us about your approach to storytelling and what storytelling means in your organization.
Yeah. There's not a good answer, but I think if you can develop instincts, that's going to tell you what makes a good story. And yesterday, for example, we just had a long Golf Magazine Zoom call deciding who's going to be on the cover of the magazine over the course of the next year. And we were really battling who would be human interest, who's actually a good golfer on the professional scale, and who can we get access to. That's kind of sometimes the triangle of consideration, and that really can narrow down the field of options. And so how do we approach storytelling? For me, it's like, all right, who interests me? Who is willing to tell that story? And if either of those things are X's, it's probably a good thing.
So I think about, and I mentioned I have 3 kids, and storytelling is such a huge part of your childhood, right? Who can remember their parents reading to them as a kid, or even just reading books as a child, and you go to the library and you figure out what your genre is, what's the thing that interested you, whether it was science fiction or fantasy or princess stories, or were you into sports stories? So first and foremost, you figure out like what interests me personally. Because the stories that I'm interested in, I'm going to be more invested in, right? As opposed to something that's just assigned to me and they're like, go figure it out. So I have found the most success with stories that I excavate on my own and then follow through with, right? The first step is putting together a really good pitch, right? Convincing someone of the value of the story that you find interesting. I just sent one over to my bosses yesterday, and you can find a story anywhere. That's that you could be talking to people, you could be reading articles, you could be paging through an old book and something pops up and you realize, oh my goodness, it's the 40th anniversary of that this coming fall. I wonder if there'd be interest in reliving that. But I saw a story of a kid, it was on Instagram, he pulled a 1-of-1 Formula 1 driver card. Did anybody see this story on Instagram? So he pulls the card, he freaks out, his dad's capturing the moment, they send it off for authentication, and the card disappears. And they get a notification from FedEx that was like, sorry, your package never arrived. So the dad posts this on social media. He's like, we saw it on eBay 2 days later. His one-of-one Formula One car showed up on eBay. Now they're contacting the seller on eBay. They found the buyer who bought it for $2,000. The buyer was like, I had no idea it was stolen. I would love to give it back to your son, no charge. And I was like, this is a story, right? Now, we don't have Formula One rights anymore at ESPN. Those went to Apple as of January 2026. So now I have to convince my bosses that despite us not having a monetary investment in that product, in that project, a good story is a good story, and why we should still pursue that. So I guess the short side of what I'm saying is a good story can come from anywhere. It's something that when you hear it, to your point, you hone the instinct of, oh, I think there might be something there. And then the being thorough enough to follow through and get your bosses on board with it, and also convince the subjects that their story is one worth telling and sharing with the world.
Thank you. Barry, what does storytelling mean in your position with the Bucks?
So it's everything. It's really the power of PR, and it has storytelling as the key component throughout. And that's something that I use every day to promote our team, to promote our business, to promote the community side. So a lot of what I do is I walk around our office in Milwaukee, and I'll ask the head of our community relations department, or our head of marketing, or our head of business, or sponsorship, or ticket sales, what are you working on, and how can I help support what you're doing through the power of PR, and to create urgency for ticket sales, to try to, right now we're looking for a sponsor for a patch for our uniforms. So how can we generate interest in that through coverage, through telling the story, having our president go on CNBC to talk about it, that we're open for business, we're looking for a sponsor, and we're better to go than CNBC to find business people, big companies. So it's really a strategic avenue to growing the company is through PR, and so we use it every single day, and I make that a big part of what my department works on.
If I could follow up on storytelling, I'd like to ask each of you, what was your favorite story that you got to tell?
Go ahead, Jeff.
It's like picking a child.
I know.
Favorite story I've gotten to tell. Told a lot of them. And I don't mean that like in a braggadocious way. I just mean that I tell a story every single week of the college football season, which they continue to expand. Awesome. So I think I told 25 stories last year during the college football season. Picking a favorite from 25 times 10. I mean, I think you go back to the beginning. I told a story when I first started on game day about a family whose infant son died, and they had chosen for him to be an organ donor, and his heart ended up going to a rival team fan. So they were LSU fans, and they ended up finding out that their son's heart went to an Auburn family's son, and so it was called Heart of a Tiger because Auburn are Tigers and LSU were Tigers. And I think it was one of my favorites because it was very early in my career when I hadn't really honed this skill as well as I have at this point, and it was still really remarkable, really memorable. I had a woman talk to me last summer when we were doing a story on her family who was also in the organ donor space. And she's sitting across from me and she says, "Can I tell you something?" She said, "When my sister was in the hospital after her accident, I remembered a story that I had seen on game day 2 weeks before about this little baby who had donated his organs to another little baby. And it brought me peace." And I was like, yeah, we did that story. But to the point again about the permanency and having a lasting impact, I think that's probably the story that means the most.
That must be so gratifying.
Jen set the bar very high. That is fantastic. Oh man, I don't have one that quite lives up to that. But while I was thinking about it, I got so much enjoyment. Maybe 3 years ago now, JJ Redick is the coach of the Lakers, but 3 years ago I don't think he was. I'm not sure when that lines up, but 3 years ago he was at ESPN, he was a podcaster. and deeply obsessed with the game of golf, which grabs these hyper-competitive people once their playing career is over and like won't spit them out. Like it just says, you're obsessed with me now, and I'm gonna roil your brain up. But I reached out to JJ on Instagram, and I'm like, there's no way in hell that he will respond to me, but he did, because he was talking about golf in his podcast. He was going golfing on Instagram, and I work for a golf publication, and I thought it would be so interesting to see how much retirement has just meant golf to him, and he was so passionate about it that he wanted to talk to me about it. And I think the reason why I really enjoyed the story is because it came from an Instagram DM. And I also, when I was 10 years old, was deeply obsessed with JJ Redick, the Duke basketball player. And so there's a little bit of little Sean in the story. There's a little bit of like, you gotta throw out some Instagram DMs to get lucky. And then you find passion in other people sharing it with me. I was given like 30 minutes on the phone with JJ, and I couldn't get him off the phone. We talked for like 50 minutes, and I had to get going because I had something else to do. And I was just so enamored with his passion for the sport, and it just turned into a very fun feature article at that point, which was, it speaks to something that affects a lot of pro athletes once they're done playing, and it spoke to 10-year-old me, and then like the research, which can be as simple as an Instagram DM.
Who would have thought that the advice coming out of this journalism panel would be slide into the DMs, right? Like, you came here this morning being like, okay, writing this down, right? But it's a really, really important point that always ask, always reach out, always inquire. The worst anyone can say is no. I know y'all have heard that probably a million times, but it rings so true in this industry, and never take it personally. When someone says no, they're not interested, they don't want to tell the story, it's not an indictment of you or your talent or your credibility, as long as you've laid the groundwork. They might just not have the time. They might have promised it to another publication. It shouldn't stop you from going out the next time and asking for the sale. It's the best lesson my dad ever taught me as a child. Ask for the sale. The worst they can say is no, and then you've just gotten experience being rejected, which is gonna happen. Trust me.
Yeah. I think one thing that's important, what Zach said, or what Sean said, is people want to talk to you. I'm surprised. Once you kind of break the ice a little.
Well, about things that they're passionate about, for sure.
Right.
And so, golf, I'm in a lucky spot where a lot of people love golf. LeBron James is following JJ's path right now. LeBron's playing in the simulator, he's watching YouTube golf. He just took a photo the other day with John Rahm, and like, you can see passion. I can just be the person, the middleman, helping them explore that passion a little bit further, more publicly.
Yeah, so Barry, what is your favorite story that you've got to tell for the box?
Well, I think one of the great stories that I've had the pleasure of working on is about Giannis Antetokounmpo. When I first arrived here, he was starting to grow into a superstar in 2017. So his story, I think everybody knows the story, right? Coming from Greece, and it's amazing. The 15th pick in the draft, and becoming one of the best players. So I felt 60 Minutes was really a terrific place to go for that. So we pitched a story to 60 Minutes, but not just about Giannis, but about the entire Giannis effect on the entire company and how it impacts business and international sales and international coverage for the team and social media. So he played a huge role in the Giannis, the impact on the Bucks, the Giannis effect, as we called it. But on a smaller scale, and like both of you said, you never know where stories come from, but you always look for them all the time, which is how you find great stories. Sometimes you don't expect them at all. So it was about 2019, and I'm behind our bench before a game, players are warming up, and I'm talking to one of our security people. And he either takes tickets at the door, or he works behind the bench to keep fans from running on the court. He's been there a number of years. And he was saying, and I noticed he was really watching the players shoot. I said, "Oh, you're a basketball fan?" He said, "Actually, I used to play for the Bucks." And I thought, wow, really? That's a great, has that story ever been told? He said, no, I don't talk about it really much. You also played for the Lakers against the Knicks in the finals in 1970. So I said, that's a pretty cool story. So I pitched that story to the New York Times, and that got a lot of attention. I had a photographer come take pictures of him as a security guard sitting behind their bench, and then also playing basketball about 30, 40 years earlier with the Bucks. So you never know where stories are found, and that's part of the favorite part of my job is finding stories to tell.
How did you land on 60 Minutes and New York Times?
Well, 60 Minutes, at that time, 60 Minutes.
They don't play golf, Sean, so.
There was no golf. I couldn't go, I'm sorry I didn't pitch you on that one.
Next time.
No, it was just 60 Minutes was it seemed like the right place to go. It was, at the time, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was the best place to tell stories, except for game day now. But it was the best place at the time. And the New York Times, again, at that time, it was the sports writer I went to. I just thought he was the best writer to tell the story the best, so that's why I went to him. But it both worked out.
I think Barry brings up another really good point, and I want to make sure that you guys pick this up, is that sometimes people don't know that their experiences are remarkable stories, right? Sometimes it takes somebody with a keen eye, with that instinct like we've developed over the years, to say, no, that's unusual. Everybody goes through their life and they think that their experiences are just like everyone else's experience. I'll tell you a very short story. I was looking for draft stories last year for the NFL draft, which of course was in Green Bay, very big deal for the state of Wisconsin. And I'm excavating, right? Excavating is what I call, you're searching the internet, you're putting out calls, you're trying to find something. I don't know if it's gonna grow, but I'm looking for that seed. And Abdul Carter was a huge player. We knew he was gonna go top 3 in the draft. So I'm looking for an Abdul Carter story. And I come to find out that a kid had died at Abdul Carter's high school. So I'm using ChatGPT. I know it's very controversial, but this is how you sort of feather out the good from the bad sometimes. And I say, is there any chance that this young man, Isaiah Turner, went to school at the same time as Abdul Carter? Well, yes, they were on the football team together. No kidding. Is there any evidence that they knew each other beyond just being football teammates? Yes. Here is a picture of Abdul Carter giving Isaiah Turner's mom his signed jersey at senior night after he died. Are you kidding me? I reach out to Abdul Carter's people. He works with Rosenhaus. It's not easy, but they were like, we'll put you in contact with Abdul Carter's family. I'm talking to Abdul Carter's dad. He said, I drove Isaiah Turner to school every morning and drove him home from school, from practice every night. He and Abdul were thick as thieves. You think that's a story? Sir! Yes, that is a story. You know what I mean? But he had no idea that that was something that shaped his son and that was impactful in his journey and something that would be worth telling. You have to give that nudge. You have to trust your instincts and sort of nudge people in that direction sometimes.
It's amazing to me how an individual story can drive a sports franchise. The story, that I heard told best was the Watch podcast on Giannis. It's a 4-part episode. Highly recommend it if you haven't listened to it. But it's just driven, the Milwaukee Bucks now for almost a decade. So sometimes you get to tell positive stories like Giannis. Sometimes there are negative stories where you have to be critical as a journalist. I'm curious for the two of you as journalists, how do you navigate that with your sources and getting access to talk to people when you have to tell a story that's critical about someone? Do you risk getting, losing your access to talk to sources if you become too critical of them?
Yeah, you're weighing it. It is a level on a fulcrum, okay, am I going to lose that access? Can I do anything with it before I lose it? But is it worth it? And if you allow fairness to be your North Star, I think the decision becomes not so difficult. If it's relevant and you can be fair to it, fair to all parties, losing access is a part of the job. I'm sure you've lost access to people, right? Or maybe you haven't. I certainly have.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that is a part of the job. But oftentimes, it's often not lost forever, right? It might be lost for the next 6 months as you're being fair to someone, and they, of course, don't see it as fair. But you will probably do some more reporting on them, or a different story on them, or someone around them, and then they'll start to be like, yeah, well, that was then. I feel better about you now. It's not it's very often not forever.
Along those lines, have you ever written about Tiger Woods?
I've probably written more about him than anyone else. Tiger, it can become actually easy to be, if you want to call it negative, fair to. Tiger is a deeply complicated character, a lot of which he's done to himself, which allows me as an observer to be as fair, but even if that leans negative, like, I think the world will often see him through that lens too. Tiger's a tough one though. Like, I was just talking over coffee this morning with Rachel Bozich, who you know, she's a former grad, and she was supposed to work on that Tiger documentary that HBO did 2 years ago, or a few years ago, 2-part thing, and I was just so stunned at how many people reacted to the story of Tiger, which is a deeply complex story with infidelity, greatness, like golfing brilliance, a father who probably bred some of the infidelity habits that Tiger had. How could you possibly tell just a story of raising golf trophies? And I think a lot of people wanted that though. But as a journalist, you can have a real badge of honor by telling the totality of someone like that.
I think it's really important to mention documentaries specifically because in this day and age, the influence from the subjects varies from documentary to documentary. It's really important. I have this harebrained idea. I pitch it everywhere. Last time I was talking to Dan Patrick, I was like, what do you think of this idea? Shouldn't documentaries be, it's not graded, but you know when you watch a movie and you have PG, PG-13, R, etc. Documentaries should have that same sort of grading system. It's not a grading, it's like a rating. It's a rating system. And the rating should be based on how much influence the subject had on telling the story. Because human beings don't want their warts out there, right? We may be aware of them because they're public figures, but they certainly don't want them talked about ad nausea. So a lot of times and I'll use Aaron Rodgers as an example because I know a lot of people here are still fans of his for everything he did for the Green Bay Packers, but he was deeply involved and invested in the documentary that came out on him on Netflix. So I don't know how much credibility that documentary has versus someone who is allowed to go in and tell the story unbiased and just present the facts. His side, the other side, whatever it may be, and let the viewer make their own determination about who this person is. That's just something I think that's really important.
What would you say on The Last Dance? What would you say that?
Well, I know Jordan was deeply involved in that as well, and
I did show his. It was pretty.
they did a better job. Yeah, but that's what we're given 6 hours, right? You know what I could do with 6 hours? Oscar.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just thinking, it would be great if there were rolling credits on the front end that stated it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you'll see executive produced by Aaron Rodgers when the closing credits, which people have already clicked out of to watch the next thing.
So jumping over to the other side of the fence, with Barry and the Bucks, we've seen journalists banished from the White House for being critical of the presidential administration. How do you sort of cultivate relationships with journalists, and what do you do when they start writing stories you don't want to see about Bucks and their players?
Right. Well, I think you bring up a use a great word, cultivate relationships. That's really what it is. It's when my first day coming from Brooklyn to Milwaukee, I found out who from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel was covering the Bucks from a business standpoint and from the New Orleans standpoint. And so I called them and went to meet them and got to know them very well over the to this day. So that was really important. So relationships are really key. So, and I think it's also important to treat journalists with respect and honesty and decency all the time. So when something comes up that maybe is controversial or a crisis situation, you can have a real conversation with them. They know you, you know them, and you can really explain what happened and what your point of view is, and they'll probably understand it, and they do, because we've done that many times, and it helps the story, or it helps the narrative moving forward. So creating relationships with reporters is everything, treating them well, and also when I call reporters on a regular basis just to check in, without having a story to pitch, or without trying to kill a story, just to check in, see how they're doing, take them to lunch, bring them to a Bucks game, show them around. So those kind of things make an impact, particularly when you need to work with them on a serious issue.
That makes me think of something. I'm very curious what you think about this. The extent to which, if a reporter comes to you with a story about the Bucks, and the Bucks, whether or not at large the organization wants that story to get out there, they have it, right? Whether it's a document that proves it or whatever. To what degree do you believe in playing ball with them? I asked this humbly, and recently, it's like, I recently worked with columns of the PGA Tour about a document that had a lot of their financials that were private, and was going to do a story about it, and I just really felt like, because of cultivated relationships, calls like that I received from them, I was like, I have the facts, and I could just send it out to the world. Or I could give this person a call and say, not only could you validate these things, what am I missing? Are you willing to share that with me? So like, I'm curious to what degree you believe in playing ball in situations like that.
I think it's really important to do, and that's kind of our philosophy, is to work closely with reporters, even on background, deep background, because you don't want a story to come out without having your side in it at all, particularly if it's a controversial story or things in there that you don't want to be seen, but they have it. So you can either ignore it and just not call it back, or pretend it doesn't exist, or try to flip it a little bit to your advantage, and give the reasons why, tell them your story, why you did what you did, and where you are, and these numbers are correct, but I think you should look at these numbers as well, to tell the full story, and I think that's important, so that's how I would handle it.
And just as a quick follow-up, some of you will be independent journalists, some of you will be working for a publication or a network, some of you will be working for the teams. There is still the challenge of when you find a story, let's just say I'm ESPN, and I pitch a story to my bosses and they greenlight it, and then we approach the comms department of, let's just say, Clemson. Clemson may say, oh crap, we really want to do that story. We have an internal video department and reporting. Notre Dame is a great example. They have an incredible internal media company that does, a series on Peacock. So when I find a Notre Dame story, I have to navigate that differently because I don't want them to turn down our request and then turn around and do it internally. That's where having relationships with the people at Notre Dame, that's where having done good work in the past to say, here's an example of what we can do for your storytelling, here's what we can do for your athlete. Jeremiah Love is somebody you guys might know. He's expected to be one of the top running backs in the upcoming NFL draft. He had a story that only I knew about from conversations with his family, and I'm sure that Notre Dame would have handled the story differently than we did, but they recognized the value of his story being told on College Game Day, what that could do for his profile, for his draft stock, etc., and they were willing to let us tell the story instead of their internal media group.
I'm going to go quickly back to something that Jen said, and maybe we'll open it up for a question or two. But you said, I only wish I could have 6 hours to tell a story. One of the things that I'm concerned about in the modern media world with the platforms that we have to tell stories is, it's things like TikTok and, very short form. We seem to be moving in the other direction that seems to have captured the attention of young audiences. How do you in your organizations try to recapture that space that's lost? Will we have a harder time finding long-form vehicles?
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's a necessary evil, though. I need our ESPN media group to take my story, whether it's 4 minutes or 6 minutes, and I need them to chop it into pieces, and I need them to push it on TikTok and Snapchat and social and and even Facebook, because there's an audience there as well that is very vocal. But I need that. I need it for exposure. I need it, and then maybe they're intrigued enough, and I know that our attention spans are shrinking, but maybe they're intrigued enough to go watch the full story. And even if they're not, it got to somebody who doesn't want to sit through a 4-minute feature on game day on Saturday morning, but caught the 20-second version of that story on TikTok and now is even a little bit more knowledgeable and educated about that subject. So I don't love it, candidly, but I recognize the value in it.
Sean, your medium is by definition a long form of communication. Are you worried about the future of magazines? Because most of the college students I talk to today don't read magazines at all.
Yeah, not a positive thought, honestly. I would say I would, if I was invested in like magazines existing 15 years from now, I'd get out of that investment, which is okay, but you can still do magazine type journalism. Pablo Torre makes magazine style stories through podcasts, audio, and on YouTube. That's like, he has spoken about how he tries to lead those stories in the way he would lead a magazine story, to break it up into sections the way he would break up a magazine story. Now, what's tough is like he was raised at Sports Illustrated and ESPN Magazine, doing magazine work, and I took a magazine journalism class here. I'm not sure if you guys still have that class.
We do.
Okay.
We do.
Do you think you'll have it in 10 years?
I think we will.
Okay.
There's a value in storytelling, and
Yeah.
that's a good medium to learn storytelling.
Yeah, it's almost just, you almost would rather have it just be long form than magazine, right? I think magazine kind of clouds it because people don't love looking at the magazines on the coffee table as much anymore. But I'm not so worried about it. I mean, oftentimes these magazines have a digital product and they have digitally savvy people working for them. And so this skill set that Jen was speaking to a little bit is how can you take that thing, and regardless of whether it's ESPN or golf.com, the onus is on the writer to write that story into different platforms, into different forms. And that's a fun new element of my job. It's a challenge, writing for TikTok, if you will. But, these guys want to see it, I hope.
Yeah.
Do you start with, hey guys?
Sometimes.
Hey guys.
It's not so bad, but yeah. Sometimes it's like you're trying to pull somebody in. I make these videos sometimes in my 1-bedroom Chicago apartment, and I have to lean in to the camera and say, all right guys, I'm telling you something here. And that's how you can get someone to watch rather than a lyrical lead that you might see in a magazine.
It's funny because you mentioned the magazines. When I was graduating from Marquette and living in my 1-bedroom apartment in Milwaukee, the one constant week in and week out was on the dining room table or on the coffee table, Sports Illustrated, ESPN the magazine. Like I had those, and I would flip to the back and see what was written there. I'd flip to the columns, and I think we have Steve Russian, who went to Marquette, was a columnist there for a very long time. And why am I missing the name of the other gentleman?
Rick Riley?
Yeah, Rick Riley. And that was what fed my interest in contributing to the sports space, and I want to do this. And the other one, Bill Simmons was the other one who wrote for ESPN the magazine, and he had this very witty sort of tongue-in-cheek delivery, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And we've talked a lot about my ESPN experience, but I also do a radio show every morning, Monday through Friday on ESPN Milwaukee Radio, and that's where I can be a little more sarcastic and witty and, kind of lean into that space. The game day stuff is a little more serious, a little more formulaic, but on the radio, you can have, an opinion and sort of bring the audience along with you. So there are all different spaces for storytelling.
If Rick Riley was my age, he would be able to write really good social media commentary for a 2.5-minute Instagram chopped up video. I'm so convinced of that. He's a good writer. He knew his stuff. He knew how to tell a story. So it's changing the form, and it's not easy.
We have 1 minute left for a question from the audience. Who wants it?
On the topic of social media and short form content, I had plans to kind of start a channel on my own independently. I want to know from you guys, what kind of steps do you take to make yourself as a young journalist noticed, and how beneficial is it to start a channel like this and pour in your time to just kind of be noticed by bigger companies?
Well, it's just one big audition, right? Are you what grade are you?
I'm a sophomore. I write for the Daily Cardinal.
Yeah, great. You have 3 years before you graduate, unless you want to graduate early, as an audition to people that will be hiring for that role. So treat it as an audition and put your heart into each one of these things, and you'll make some that are good, you'll make some that aren't as good, and some that will perform better than others. I don't know if I have as good an answer about getting it out there as much, because there's a lot that's out there. But if you treat it like an audition, a job application of sorts, and you're just not sure what job you're applying for, I think that will teach you the steps and like ingrain some instincts.
So reps are the most important thing to have success in any industry, right? You always hear about the 10,000 hour rule and things like that. I tell every student who is interested in broadcasting, you have a camera in your pocket that you carry with you everywhere you go. I bet you can take it to the bathrooms, don't you? Yes, you do. When you have 5 minutes, maybe schedule it. Do a broadcast into your phone. Hey, this is Jen. We're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks today. Did you see they're winners of 8 of the last 10, and now they actually have a shot at the play-in tournament without Giannis? Whatever it is, doesn't even matter what the content is. But you talk, and then you put it into a folder on your phone, and you don't have to send it to anyone. It can just sit in your phone forever. But I bet if you do that every single day, something sports-related or otherwise, you look back 30 days, you look back 60 days, you're gonna see so much improvement. And then when you feel comfortable with the content, you can start sending it to people. You can send it to the news director at the local station. You can send it to the editor of the paper, whatever it may be, and say, what do you think of this? I'd love to get some constructive feedback. You have the opportunity that we didn't have when we were younger, because we had to lug around big cameras and microphones were wired and all this other crazy stuff, to practice what you want to do every single day. And the people who take up that advice, the people who do that, are going to soar past the people who don't.
Barry, last word?
No, I agree. You should, Jen gave great options for how to get into it. I think you should consider doing that. The fact that you even want to do it is great. So you have a passion for it already. So you're already ahead of the game. So continue to do what you're doing and take advantage of the time that you have here and send it to people and let people see what you're doing. I think you should take advantage of the time and the place where you are.
Also study it. Like, I mean, you can learn a lot from other people that are doing this. I used Pablo Torre earlier, only because he's kind of like a journalistic idol of mine, and he used to, before he started doing Around the Horn hits, he used to watch Around the Horn, and like with a stopwatch, he would keep track of, okay, that he made that point in 20 seconds. I have to make it in 17 seconds. Like, there's studying the tape just in the same way football players do. You can do that in journalism and communications.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our panel today. It's been a pleasure to be up here. Thank you very much.